I'm author Mark Muncy,
And I'm author Erika Lance.
and this is Eerie Travels. Greetings, travelers.
Greetings.
Oh my. Yes, this is a we recorded this shortly after World Contact Day, which was March 15th. So for those of you, you guys all celebrating St. Patty's Day, you don't know what you're missing. So World Contact Day is so much cooler.
I was gonna say, what in the hell is World Contact Day?
World Contact Day is the day where we're all supposed to sit and think to our alien overlords and communicate with them psychically, so that we make contact with them from other dimensions, other locations, other planets. And so that became a holiday called World Contact Day. And it also is supposedly the day we hope that they will return and contact us. But I don't know if we want them contacting us, to be honest. So.
Well, if they're cool, I'm fine with it. But if they're not cool, I would
kind of lean towards the Hawking theory that, hey, if they're out there and they're looking for things, they may not be exactly the nicest people, and they could wipe us out in a second. So very Independence Day. So
I think if they were going to do that, they would have already done that. So
true that.
Yeah,
I kind of go with Ming the Merciless from Flash Gordon, that he sends the tests out, and if we don't bother him, then he's like, okay, they're too little for me to, I ignore them. But if they fight back, that's when I got to take them out.
Did you seriously just make a Flash Gordon reference?
King of the Impossible.
Oh my God.
Oh, now we just got copyright stricken because
exactly. Great.
I nailed Freddie Mercury right there. So good. That they copyright infringes us. Copyright strike. Nope.
Said no one ever.
No, never. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Freddie. I know you're not happy about that one, but
Okay.
I did just meet Sam Jones at Pensacon, so that was cool.
Very cool. Very cool. I like how this morphed from UFOs to Queen. Sorry, UFOs to Flash Gordon to Queen.
Yes.
Where were people are probably listening going, where the hell are they going with this?
World Contact Day. There you go.
Yeah, that's not where we're going with this episode, though. It's past World Contact Day. This is April. Yes. They're listening to us in April. So I do have breaking news, though. So we have to insert our favorite breaking news music. Okay, my breaking news. Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. This is going to, of course, be shared in the show notes. UFO in Ireland? The town of Ballymahan, I think I said that correctly, reports unusual sightings in the night sky. So, an unidentified flying object, or UAB, right?
UAP. Unidentified aerial phenomena.
Yeah, I can't, whatever. Okay.
That's the new military term. So.
Yeah, was spotted by a resident in a small town in Ireland last week. The person on Monday reached out to a local publication, The Leader, and told them about the UFO, or UAP. The reader said that it spotted unusual activity in the night sky, Oliver Ballymahan in Longford. The person in question also told the publication that he recorded the incident that he saw around 8 p.m. Even though the photos are a little blurry, their movement of three lights in the sky was very clear. They moved quickly, formed a triangle, and the caller said the photographs don't do it justice. It was a very clear night. The three lights were on the angles of the craft. The body of the craft was black. The lights were the color of an orange flame. The speed that they moved confirmed it was not an ordinary aircraft, right? So what's interesting, though, is if you Google, so they have pictures of this, right? They're blurry, but they have pictures of this, right? But if you Google UFOs in Ireland, you see very similar photos from this. So actually in December of last year, there was a story about the increased calls police were getting in Ireland for UFO sightings. So, and the military and stuff said that there was nothing over the skies at that time. So,
of course. of course. Now that could change because that's what they'll say, and then a couple years later, when people are insisting on it, suddenly they'll be like, "Oh, there was this thing. We just didn't want to talk about it because it was a classified project." And that's how these things always turn out. So,
well, it's true, but who knows? Ireland may be a hotspot for the UFO activity.
Yeah,
you don't know.
I'm
going to Ireland. I'm going to
all
Ireland.
over the world, over the world. So
I will let you know if I see any UFOs while I'm there.
And speaking of which, we have a returning guest to discuss UFOs.
Well, actually, she's not returning. This is her first episode.
Oh, wow. Then I'm in an alternate timeline where I've misinterpreted things and misread things. So
that's okay. You can totally do that. But our amazing guest is actually going to be with us on another episode.
Oh, that's what's going on. I see. That's
okay. Mark, you're so pretty. That's why we have you on the show. You're the spokesmodel.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay.
I'm just the face.
You're just the face. You're just the pretty face of this show. But our guest is Mark. Go ahead, do the announcement.
Oh, we have the amazing author Danielle Orsino is with us, and Danielle, welcome to Eerie Travels.
Thank you so much for having me. Since this is my first time being here, I appreciate it.
There's a lot of winking happening here behind the scenes here.
It's like we recorded back to back, maybe. I don't know.
We did record. Listen, we are professionals here, and never slip up ever. Like when we had a copyright infringement from 1937, I had to change the name of the show after 2 episodes. Maybe that sort of thing.
That never happens.
Never happens.
So anyway, Danielle, tell us about yourself for listeners who don't know.
I am a fantasy author who writes Birth of the Fae from Four Horsemen Publications. Wink, wink again. And I actually had my own little UFO sighting.
Yes, that's why we when you reached out about this, we were like, oh my goodness, we have to talk. So because you are not a witness to just a UFO sighting, you're a witness to probably one of the most famous UFO sightings in some circles. A lot of people still don't know it. So I'm gonna let you tell your story, and then I will chime in with what I know about it. And Erika, feel free.
I don't know anything about this, so I'm going to peanut gallery like I do and just ask weird questions when you guys say stuff. So I was alive during this time. It's one of my favorite decades, not going to lie, but I never heard about it, but I apparently lived under a rock for some
reason. I'm dying to hear Danielle's, encounter with this. So everybody buckle up, because this is a fun one.
Okay.
I didn't know it was that big of a deal, to be very honest with you. I think they actually did an unsolved mystery little take about it, but at the time, I didn't know it was a big deal. It was 1985, November, I think, of 1985. Mm-hmm. And it's weird that I know these little details. It's only because I was watching The Cosby Show, which was on NBC between 8 and 8:30. So can I tell you the exact time I saw it? No, I just know it was in between that time. I lived in Carmel, New York. So that is about from the city, 65 minutes driving, give or take, north of Manhattan. And for some reason, I live up in the sticks. In Carmel, it was not very developed at the time, so there was not a lot of light pollution. And where I lived up on a hill. It was a 3/4 of a mile walk down the hill to get to the rest of the neighborhood. So I was elevated somewhat. On the cul-de-sac, there were only 2 other homes. My house was in the middle and then flanked by 2 other homes. When you looked up from my house, when you went out on the deck, you looked out and there were other homes that were kind of tiered way out. So you had a very nice view of the sky, of everything. I mean, like I said, we were out in the sticks. So I was looking out my bedroom window for some reason or another, I was in 5th grade. So, and then these lights, and they were not bright, but huge. It was whatever it was just really big, came into view. And I remember kind of wondering, it was at first I thought maybe it's a low plane, but even as a kid, I was like, planes aren't that big. And I stopped and I opened up my window to listen for a motor or something. And that's when I realized whatever this was really slow and silent. And I called my brother and sister, who were both younger, to the window. They looked at it, and the first thing out of my little brother's mouth was like, holy crap, we're getting invaded. And he ran downstairs, yelled for my mother. My mother came upstairs and she was just annoyed because she was like, what? She looked out the window and started, holy shit, like freaking out because it was so big, you couldn't see through it. There were stars out. Once this thing came over the trees, and when I mean over the trees, like it was right over these large trees that flanked my house, you couldn't see the stars anymore in the middle. And that's when she realized it was solid. She ran out the deck. I followed her, and then my brother and my sister sat like in the doorway screaming, get back in the house, because my brother was like, they're going to beam you up. And we were out there watching it, and it just silently hovered, had lights around it. They were mostly red. There were two white lights, like one was on the right, one was on the left, and they were, perfectly parallel to each other kind of thing. And it was just silently moving over the trees. And the trees were they were probably 20 feet from my bedroom window to the trees. And it was just dead silent, creeping across the sky. And we kept looking up to see if we could see a break to the stars. And we couldn't. And it was just huge. And then it moved. The break point was over the middle of my neighbor's backyard. And then it lifted up, shot out like super speed, and then started hovering again. And it kept doing this in this weird zigzag pattern until it got to a point over the hill line. And we just couldn't see it. Like you could kind of still see lights. And we just sat there like looking at each other because we just didn't know. We knew that we saw something that no plane could do this. It stayed silent. It moved so fast, but it was also this very weird zigzag thing. And I looked at my mother and she said, I'm going to call the cops. And I was like, who are you calling? The intergalactic police? Like, what are you going to, and she got on the phone and she called the cops. And the cops were like, yeah, we know. Because they were getting phone calls all night about this. My neighbors flipped on the lights on their deck and yelled back at us. And they were like, did you see that? And my mother was like, I'm on the phone. Like, she's like, I called the cops. I'm on the phone. And they were just like, everybody in there was just like, what the hell was that? We couldn't sleep that night because like my brother was just convinced we're getting invaded. He had his He-Man sword out. He was ready. He was taking them on, ready to go. Like, let's go. The next day went to school and everybody on the bus in the neighborhood was talking about it. There was nobody not talking about this thing, but everybody described the exact same thing, the same flight pattern, which was so weird because it's not like we were talking on the phone. Everybody was kind of weird. Like the kids weren't like, oh my God, you'll think I'm crazy. Everybody was buzzing, but we didn't all talk before. So you couldn't be like, okay, let's get our story straight. Went to school. Some people were talking about it who were near us, but then when we got to science class, my science teacher couldn't believe that we all described the same thing and actually had us draw on the board what we saw. Everybody drew the same thing. We all described the same flight pattern. And at that point, she was like, okay, this is weird. Like, this is officially odd. And at first she was like, oh, you guys mean the V-shaped thing. And I was like, no, we don't mean the V-shaped thing. And because most of us described it was more circular. Everybody was talking about the V-shaped thing from like the year before.
Yes.
None of us were talking about that. We were talking about the circular object. And to us, it looked more circular. It might have been curved in the middle to have a V shape, but from what we could see, it looked more circular. And that's what everybody described. Everybody talked about, down to the color of the lights, the two white lights, like I said, the flight pattern, all of it. And it buzzed about it for, weeks. And everybody stuck to looking to the skies. There was one report that came out of Stormville Airport. And I remember a friend of mine was like, yeah, we all know, the stunt pilots that were doing it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, and everybody was like, no, you couldn't see the center. That's what they all kept saying. They were like, there was nothing in the center. You looked up, and we were literally under it at one point. There was nothing in the center. It was black. And the way that thing lifted up and shot off and then stopped and then started hovering again, there was no way that was an airplane. No way at all. To this day, I don't know what it was. It was a UFO. I don't care what anybody says. Something was controlling that thing. I've never forgotten what it looked like. Never will. And then it was all over the Reporter Dispatch after that, which was like our Westchester County, like local newspaper thing. And then we heard reports that it was, people saw it on 684, which was the main interstate, to get down to White Plains, 684, 84, 684. And people saw it there. And same thing. So to this day, Mark, I have no idea what I saw.
No, and that's, you are not alone. So that's the nice thing about this, is that this was well documented sighting. And it is, the whole Hudson Valley, UFOs are well documented. To this day, people still see unusual craft in that area. And there's not really, an explanation, there's not a major military base nearby to do testing of things there's some close, but not that areas tend to be restricted airspace because of New York City and all that, but you are talking about the outlying parts of it. But before we go into the first wave, that I'll talk about the more famous historical encounter, but I think we should probably go ahead and take our first break. Or our break, and
okay, we can take our first break, and we will be right back, travelers.
Greetings, travelers. Once again, I come to you with an offer, a good offer this time. Paranormality Magazine, the news for those of us who like a little weird, a little outside, I think I'm speaking to my audience here. But anyway, they've reached out to us with a special offer for our listeners. If you go to paranormalitymag.com, you can get 10% off your subscription. You can get 10% off any digital issue. You can get 10% off all the awesome merch by just using the code TRAVELS when you check out. Where else are you going to find this wonderful articles and stuff like we have found for you? And man, the amazing blogs, the amazing magazine, it's so worth your time and effort. So please, paranormalitymag.com, and then use the code TRAVELS. We'll see you on the other side.
Greetings, mortals and others. I'm Dick Terhune, the voice from hell. I work with haunted attractions all over the US, Canada, and Europe to increase audiences and enhance their experience with highly effective commercials, narrations, animatronic character voices, whatever your dark heart desires. Let me help you do more, scare more, profit more. Find out more at Voice from Hell on Facebook and at voicefromhell.com.
And we're back. Oh my gosh. So Danielle, thank you for that. That's incredible. Now, what's funny, you said 1985 and a round object. Now, the most famous Hudson Valley encounter was in 1981, which is just before midnight on New Year's. Everybody thought this was some sort of New Year's prank or something that was launched for fireworks. And a police officer sees and he's off duty because he's going to New Year's stuff, and he saw what they were trying to say, oh, you saw the boomerang, you saw the V. He saw a V-shaped craft over Kent, New York, and then it was heading straight, and they could see the solid structure, but they said it had like 15 red and green lights along the side of it. And it maintained about an altitude of about 150 meters, he was saying. And it was walking it was like a walking pace, he said. It was like a 5 mile an hour. It could not have gone slower.
That was about what I saw. Yeah.
And he again said no sound. Maybe a hum
none
that he was picking up, but he wasn't sure that that was the engine And then all the colored lights went out. And 3 blinding white lights in the shape of the triangle. You can see it wasn't a V, it was a triangle. And, which is our classic black triangles we've been talking about for many episodes now. And then when it went to those 3 lights, the big bright lights, it took off at an insane speed. And again, without making a sound.
Mhm.
Now, then another guy nearby on Interstate 84 saw it just would apparently have been about a minute after this guy, and he saw it slow down, stop, and then literally crawl along the interstate. And he said it looked like a boomerang. Again, he wasn't seeing the whole picture at the time, and it went back to the colored lights in the sky. And now what was funny is, in his report, he says a voice in him told him that he felt thoughts that weren't his own and said, "Be not afraid," that kind of thing. So that's interesting. So then a couple months later in February.
Wait. Let's ask. Did you hear any voices, Danielle?
No. I can honestly say the only voice I was hearing was Bill Cosby and the Cosby Show going on, which is a whole other issue we're not going to get into. But that's what was, the TV was on. So that was the only voices we were hearing at that point.
That makes it a Thursday night, because that was can't miss Thursdays. So but yeah, so 1982, Monique O'Driscoll and her daughter saw a lighted object in the sky on a county road and watched it pass over their car, and then it stopped above a frozen lake, and then she described it as having about 50 red lights. And it was about 90 meters across. And again, perfectly silent. Now, again, it was a black triangle. And though it started to turn away, she kind of said, "Oh, please don't go away. I want to look at you a little bit more." So it turned around and faced her again. And then she panicked and ran, because suddenly it, when that giant kraken's eye turns towards you, suddenly that's not what you really wanted, and there were several other witnesses that corroborated her story. And again, this is Kent, this is Carmel, New York, this is Danbury, Connecticut. All of them are overflowing with phone calls to the police department about seeing these things. So March, month later, 1983, a year and a month later, 1983, Brewster, New York sees the V again with all the colors of the rainbow, according to the quote, arranged along its wings. And then it made a sharp turn, and this is over Putnam County. And then again, I-84, that seems to be UFO highway here. And again, they said about 40 meters long, 100 meters wide. Of course, the New York report was all meters. So us, Yankees can't understand that. But we were trying to figure it out. But again, this one rotated towards the guy, and he bugs out. Now, that's wave 1. So that's 1982, right? Yeah, 1981, 1982. So at this point, there's investigations, and the Yorktown police say it was a group of planes flying in formation. It was a hoax.
That's what we heard.
Although they were unable to identify the pilots. And then actually the Putnam police said it was ultralights that were flying in formation doing this. And I don't know if anybody of you have ever ridden in an ultralight. I did when I was younger.
What is an ultralight? So wait,
Those
clarify
are
that.
like gliders with a little engine hanging on them so that they can take off and land. They look like hang gliders, but they have a motor.
Okay.
And the thing about them is they're not quiet.
Can't
They
maneuver.
sound like lawnmowers. They sound like leaf blowers. I always picture if aliens ever come to Earth, they're going to tell us, turn off the damn lawn blowers, because we're hearing, there's no sound in space, but we still hear those damn things. And that's exactly what ultralights sound like. And and I can't imagine flying these in formation, because they're buffeted by every little breeze, every little wind, and and doing it at night.
No.
dozens of them flying in a V formation never could have happened. And then also the descriptions of it blocking out the stars, it making a giant triangle, and then also going at 5 miles an hour or less. That's I don't know. I mean, there was at one point dirigibles were possibly coming back as a thing. We were actually looking into that, and now of course with balloons being a big thing in the last few weeks, UAP stuff, it could have happened, but this one drew the attention of some famous people, and that would be the guys who used to run Project Bluebook, our great Professor Alan Hynek.
So what is Project Bluebook?
Project Bluebook was our government's answer to finding out the secrets of UFOs. We ran a program that would go out and would determine if UFOs were a threat to national security. And we ran it throughout the 1960s and 70s. And then we did a big congressional hearing on it and shut it down. Said, nope, they're not a threat. Didn't say they weren't a thing, just said they were not a threat. And we've investigated 1,000 cases and we've identified all but 200 of them. Well, what about those other 200? Well, it doesn't matter. They're not a threat. So who cares? So they shut it down. And Professor Alan Hynek was the scientific advisor for this. And he was brought on and he was able to debunk quite a few. But that, but then later he came back and said, after he retired from that, there was stuff that I wasn't able to debunk. And also some of the stuff I debunked, I was ordered to debunk. And they changed my writings. They changed my stories. He wound up being a consultant on this movie called Close Encounters of the Third Kind with this guy named Steven Spielberg, shortly before he passed away. Now, the other thing is he is, looking into this when 1984, the second wave begins. So there's another big UFO flap, and we like to call them flaps when a bunch of sightings happen all at once. And this one was flying crosses, X's, and then also circular formations of crafts, ones that looked like they were in circles. And some were even caught on video. And that's what made the Unsolved Mysteries. And some people, said that hovered over them and bathed them in light. In March 25th, 1984, that's the one, 300 witnesses called in, over 300 called in. And this was over the Taconic Parkway. And the Caramel Police Department said they had at least 200 calls that night. And a few saw the UFO themselves. So, there was a lieutenant who said it was not a conventional aircraft, could not possibly be a conventional aircraft. It was too big. More sightings on March 31st. And then June 11th, 1984, the V formation came back. And this was in Newcastle. So not far from there. And a neighboring county's airport actually tracked that one on radar. Now, the circular formations is one not a lot of people talk about because everybody talks about the V and the triangle. And that's why when you brought up the circle, I'm thrilled. I'm sitting there giddy in my seat because that's the one that's lesser talked about. It's everybody talks about that V, the flying, because the flying triangles are a global phenomena and everything, but the circles are the classic saucers. They're the classic flying shape. And then now this one was in there was a guy fishing on Candlewood Lake, which is in Danbury.
That's in Connecticut. Yep.
Yeah. And he saw the circular rimmed object with 20 to 30 multicolored lights around the edges, and he saw it bending around the edges. So it wasn't things hanging underneath, like it couldn't have been ultralights, hanging lights underneath them. And they seem to be spinning slightly, the lights, but the object was still. And when he turned off the light on his boat to try to get his eyes adjusted to it, that's when its lights went off. And so everybody's like, oh, he just it was reflection of something on the water. And it's like, no, it was above me. It was 200 feet above me. And it really was only 200 feet above him. So
wow.
very low. And then
That's what I remember about this, is it was very low. I mean,
Yeah.
the trees were big, but they weren't like so mature, because we had a shed, and that shed was, I remember my dad could touch the top, like if he reached up. So that shed was probably only about 8 feet. And so the trees up from that, my trees were probably only about 35 feet high. And this was just above those trees. So this
Yeah.
thing was maybe 100 feet in the air. It was not that high in the air. That's what made us that's why we were looking at it, because it looked like it could just land on us, like just fall flat, like a big plate just landing. It was not high at all.
It's crazy. Yeah, the New York State Police, the FAA, a bunch of people were invited to, dig into this, and they all declined. So there's something, they were invited by Alan Hynek and a few others. Then ABC television was trying to dig into it, and again, nothing. So Hynek writes a book with journalist Bob Pratt, and Hynek died in 86. But this book came out right after his death, late 86. And that was what he discusses this. It's definitely, something, that he was digging into the V shape and and all that, but then he was the one who brought up the crosses and the circles too. And again, if you read that book, that's kind of a throwaway bit, but that's why I'm like, wow, that you brought that up. I thought you were going to go straight to the V. That's what everybody thinks of, and the flying wing. And of course, everybody said, "Oh, it was the stealth bomber we were just about to announce," and it was these things.
Mm-hmm.
No, these things are moving super slow. That thing has to move fast to keep flying. Otherwise, the stealth material fall off of it. The SR-71 Blackbird, same thing. It's they have to move fast, and they make a hell of a lot of noise. Even they're stealth. That's just because they block radar, not because they're quiet.
No, this thing was so silent. That, like I said, part of it, and you could have walked under it and kept pace. Like that's how slow this was, and that's why when it lifted up and shot off, it was almost like you blinked and it was ahead. But it kept doing that. It would lift up, shoot off, and then it looked like it stopped and then would slow down and would go back to that slow crawl. And it just kept doing this, but it would do it in this weird zigzag. It was never straight. Lift up, shoot off, and then but it would change that position. It was just, and it just kept zigzagging like that. I've just never seen it. It's like, it almost looked like the Flash, the way it was kind of doing it, and then it would just stop. And it was just, there's no way somebody could tell me it was planes in formation.
No, and
they can't do that.
And I remember there was a story that somebody in the paper said that one of the guys who runs the airport said he overheard the pilots talking.
The Stormville Airport.
Yeah,
yes.
Heard the pilots talking on the ground how they were going to make it happen, but didn't say which planes were going up. Never say he saw planes go up, but he heard pilot voices. I don't know if anybody's ever been on a flight line. You don't really hear voices a lot,
I don't know if anybody's ever been to Stormville Airport, but I can tell you, Stormville Airport, especially at that time, is a small local airport,
yes.
Like tiny crop duster kind of airport. We had the Stormville Flea Market there. At that point, Stormville Flea Market isn't what everybody knows it is now. It was like super tiny. It wasn't, I'm telling you, it wasn't operating at 8 o'clock at night. None of this was going on.
30 or 40 planes flying with,
Hell no, that would be the talk of the town.
Yeah.
Carmel was a gossip town, and Kent was 2 minutes down the road from me. I was on the Lake Carmel, Kent border.
Right.
It was right
You're
there.
Right there. Yeah.
Right there. So no, this wasn't, like I said, Carmel, my graduating class was 144 people. We all knew each other. We all went from kindergarten all the way up to high school with each other. Everybody knew everybody's business. Everybody's dad. If you were on Kent Police, we knew your dad. Like everybody knew each other. There was no way somebody was pulling this off and nobody was going to talk.
Right.
Nobody in Carmel keep their mouth shut that long.
And that's what some people thought was like, like what happened after the Phoenix Lights incident, which, around the same time as people saw a bunch of strange lights flying over Phoenix and looked like a giant craft. Famously, we found out recently that Kurt Russell was one of the first guys to report it because he was flying his little private plane, and he reported it. He didn't even realize it was a famous UFO sighting until he was doing media tour or something. But anyway, that people saw this strange thing, and then 2 hours later they saw it again, and it looked different. And then the military says, "Oh, we sent a plane up, and it was shooting flares off."
Yes.
Well, yeah, the second one you did 2 hours later to cover the fact that you didn't know what the hell the first one was. That's what you did. So just enough time to get that ready to go. But I think most famously on this is, we have police reports. We have dozens of witness sightings. We have hundreds of witness sightings. Like I said, students, adults, everybody saw this. It reminds me of Crestview, where it just kind of got wiped off the map for a little while. The big thing with this, though, was the Indian Point nuclear plant. They went on lockdown during this. So that is for unknown reasons. So, we have a nuclear lockdown right after 3 Mile Island. And, these things had to be reported to the government. Why would you go on lockdown if it was a bunch of ultralights flying around? So weird. Yeah, it was not, I would say, a media splash at the time, wasn't huge. And then, like I said, Unsolved Mysteries a few years later brings it back up. It starts getting a little traction. Hynek's book comes out, gives it a little more traction. So that's why, those in the know UFO enthusiasts, now we're, almost 40 years on, study it. And, not that we're naming names or dates. Because you were like, you weren't born yet when this happened. So, that's how we know you're only 29, Danielle. So that's all good. But yeah, but
3 years old.
Well, I got to touch on a couple things here.
Yeah, please. Erika, what are your thoughts?
So first off, I want the job where there's a UFO and somebody goes, "Oh crap, there's a UFO. What do we do about this?" And somebody goes, "I got an idea. Go send a plane up and have them launch a bunch of flares."
Yeah.
Like,
let me get the book out. Job. Protocol.
Yeah. Or, let's get some ultralights together and fly them around in a V formation. And wait, nobody can fly in a V formation in ultralights. It'll be close enough. It'll work.
And nobody knows. Nobody knows, so it's fine. We'll just
release some sandhill cranes and set them on their migratory path. It'll be fine. So we have them just sitting in a box over there, ready.
So, I mean, of course, there's that. My question also comes with, why do you think there hasn't been a lot of sightings since this time?
Oh, there still are. But it hasn't been the big flaps like this. There are smaller, more localized sightings. The large craft is still seen in the area. I've heard reports of the circle and the V shape. The cross shape is less common, but it is still seen in that area.
Well, how come do you think it's not as talked about then, I guess?
It's one of those, it's another one of those, I think, because it was such a big deal. And then everybody's like, oh, it's just, it was just ultralights. It was just planes. Oh, they're trying to do it again. There's, it's not like, Flatwoods or Mothman Festival where they have a festival to celebrate the Hudson
it didn't bring
Valley
anything
encounter.
into the community. And Carmel, when this all happened, there was a certain stigma that Carmel was in the sticks. We were a bunch of hicks. There just was a stigma of shut up. Like, we don't need this attention. So everybody just be quiet. It's not doing anything for us. It wasn't more that we're crazy. Everybody there knew what they saw, but it was more that we don't need this type of attention. Like, it's not, just everybody be quiet.
Yeah.
So I think it became a little bit more of shut up. Like, this is not doing anything for us. We don't need the attention. We don't need the city slickers like coming up and making fun of us, because it wasn't, there were some media outlets that did not portray it nicely for us. So it was like, I think the New York Times even put out an article of like skeptics, and it wasn't nice to us. So I think Carmel kind of tended to rally around itself, like, keep them out. We don't need that.
It was Hopkinsville all over again. So with the Hopkinsville encounter where everybody talked about it for a few days, and then suddenly it was backlash from all the neighbors saying, "What are you doing?" you're bringing the wrong kind of attention to us. So
yeah, we just kind of shut up about it. Like, it wasn't, I think it just kind of became like no, outsiders don't need to know about this. So just shut up.
And again, late 80s. So this is also, the talk shows are coming on. So it's the Morton Downey Juniors and all that. They had a field day with this for a little bit. And that's why, it kind of went away. It was like, oh, okay, we don't need to do that. I mean, I think even HBO was trying to do a special on this at one point, and it didn't go very far, or if it did air, I think they aired the footage of the one guy who had videoed it. And again, this is early days of video cameras, so it's not like everybody had cell phones and taking pictures. There was one guy who happened to have a video camera that, and video cameras were expensive then, and was able to do it. So I would like to see the security tapes from the Indian Point reactor of that night and see what was going on. That would be the thing I would love to see.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, fans out there, make a plug, Mark.
Oh yeah, please drop us a line. Please send us your emails. Let it, if you saw the Hudson Valley lights or the wave 1 or wave 2, we'd love to hear it. And you are not alone. And again, document, because there are so many witnesses who saw it. But sadly, there's not a lot of documented encounters where people just said they called the police, but that's all they say. They don't say exactly what they said. We'd like to know. And if we can get literally hundreds of calls and tens of hours of documentation on this, there should be more. If that many people saw it, there should be more. And Danielle, have you ever written to MUFON or anything about your experience?
No, I never thought of it, to be honest with you, because you kind of always think somebody else would do it. And at the time
Right.
I was a kid, so I was like, will anybody really listen to me and take it seriously? I think that was part of it. I mean, I was in 5th grade when this happened. I wasn't thinking that anybody would even investigate it, much less take it seriously coming from a kid. That wasn't it. And I think also the other part is when you're that young, you automatically assume it's aliens. Somebody must be handling it. Like, why would they
Right.
not think it was? Like, you just, you kind of go to that magical thinking of course it's aliens. And they mean well, like, it's all good.
And that's why, yeah, exactly. That's why, please, everybody send us an email. If you don't want to go to MUFON, you don't want to go to, some other UFO reporting agency, send it to Erie Travels. You can go click on the link at our website, erietravels.com, and I'll make sure it gets to the right places, for documentation and stuff like that. And we'll definitely add your report to the archives now as well. So I'll send it out to a couple places with your permission. So,
Yeah.
and that way it's just one more encounter there. And again, we're following Hynek's legacy here, so that always makes me happy too. So,
Well,
Very cool.
and on that note, my friend, don't you have something from our favorite magazine?
oh yes. So we're gonna we've got our wonderful friends at Paranormality Magazine. They are one of our proud sponsors, and please go to their website, paranormalitymag.com, link in the notes. And if you use the word travels, get yourself a nice subscription discount, and that way they know we sent you. But one of the headlines is Congressman says UFO tech is being reverse engineered. So this is actual state representative. So
What state?
this is Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
What?
And he expressed his belief that, quote, we have recovered a craft at some point and possible beings. I think a lot of that is being reverse engineered right now, but we just don't understand it. Now, this is in the beginning of February. So right after we shot down the crazy things, 4 objects right after each other. So, Chinese surveillance balloon and some other things that we don't know, the cigar shape, or what you think was Ron and Harry's car. They did not do well against that Tomahawk missile. But anyway, yeah. So, the Pentagon is yet to determine the exact composition of these objects. And so, of course, he made these comments shortly thereafter. And there's a full article available at Paranormality mag.com. So this is one of their web articles, but there's the in-depth articles are in the magazine itself. So enjoy that. But he's like even in this, they even quote Steven Spielberg, talking about I think what's coming out has been really fascinating. And he thinks there's going to be more to come. So it's a very cool article. Highly recommend you go to it and read it. And then, like I said, let them know Erie Travels sent you.
Yeah, no. I want to talk though before we end off, because I think Danielle shared her experience with us. Danielle, is this the only UFO experience you've had?
Of that magnitude, yes. After that, I had one other one outside where I saw something, and it was teeter-tottering in the air, and it was cigar shaped. And it was shortly after seeing the circular object. And at that point, I just thought, there's weird crap going on. I'm going inside. I just left it at that.
Same area, same time period, or a few years later?
It was probably, no, it was a couple months after that.
Okay, so still during that same flap then.
Yeah, I just kicked it to the curb, and I was like, we out. At that point, my little brain was like, there's just too much. And yeah, I just literally was like, we out. I went inside, and I just looked at like my parents and was like, went upstairs and just, it was just one of those moments of, I'm done. And out. So yeah, after that, I haven't really seen, but I haven't been looking, I'll be honest.
Keeping the head down.
Yeah, it was a little bit of, if they want me, they know where to find me. They'll come get me. We're not fighting it, but we ain't looking either.
There you go.
What about you, Mark?
I've seen some things in the sky, but never had a close encounter. But growing up in the back hills of West Virginia, Kentucky, that dark sky territory, I've seen some strange things. Was it a satellite? Was it a plane doing unusual things? And we're in the flight path for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, so there may have been some experimental craft that I saw a little before it was supposed to be let public. I will say the day in 1989 that I was coming home from school one day, and I was driving my new to me pickup, and we were driving along Shore Acres Boulevard heading out towards Tampa Bay, and I see two F-16s escorting a flying craft of some sort, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're finally announcing that we've found aliens. And it was the day they announced the stealth bomber, and they were showing it off at MacDill Air Force Base. Wow. And I had never seen it before, and that looked like some sort of alien craft to me at the time. So,
wow. Well, I think here's the thing. I firmly believe there's something out there. We cannot be alone. There was another news report recently of all the galaxies they're finding.
Yeah.
And
thank you, James Webb Telescope. Yep.
Yeah, just galaxy after galaxy. So to think everything is unpopulated besides this one planet would be just ludicrous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in New Mexico. I lived many places, as people who are on this podcast will discover as we share stories, right? But I lived in New Mexico, and I lived right near what are called the Sandia Mountains. Sandia, by the way, means watermelon. And the reason it means watermelon, well, it's because watermelon, but the reason these mountains are labeled the Sandia Mountains, you would think I was drinking on this podcast, is because at night when the sun is setting, it looks like a watermelon. It's pink on the top, and then it's got the green on the bottom. So they look like the Watermelon Mountains. But it was really dark out there, heavily up in the air, because it's 5,000 or something feet above sea level. And we used to sit out with the horses and the chickens and stuff. I grew up in Hollywood, California, so this was all really weird to me anyway. But you would look up in the sky and you would see things come, hover, drop down, raise up, move, drop down, raise up, and no sound, and then take off. Like, what we jokingly say is light speed, but just there was no way it went from floating to, couldn't have been a helicopter, because they don't move that fast. And my mom used to tell me that they were coming to harvest resources like minerals and stuff like that. So I think that would be kind of interesting, to know that they were coming to harvest. But yeah, I think most people have had some sort of experience they can't necessarily explain, and we would love to hear yours. Share them.
Yes. Like I said, preternatural stuff we don't understand yet. Let's get some studies on this. Let's get some money behind it, and let's all share stories. Let's keep the stories alive. Again, Danielle, you didn't know that others had reported it and all that, so that's amazing to me. So that's great. And that was when I went to talk to the Crestview sighting people, which started the whole research for the most recent book. Was these were people who saw it in the 50s, saw strange things as kids at a school, and then they were told, oh, it was helicopters. But now they're seeing these videos leaking from the government, and it looks like the stuff they saw in the 1950s, and they're like, see, it wasn't helicopters. It was some strange craft, and I wasn't crazy. And now they're in their 70s and they're talking about this, so the ones that are left, I'm sad to wonder how many are not here anymore to talk about it. So again, if you saw something, say something, report it, please document it. And thank you all so much for joining us. And Danielle, thank you so much for your time. Where can we find you? If we need to read your books.
When we want
you
to
can
read your books.
Yes.
Oh, that's an even better one. You can find me at birthofthefae.com or on Instagram at birthofthefae, FAE_novel. And the books are the Birth of the Fae series, published by Four Horsemen Publications.
Hey, I see what we did there. So
Yes, shameless self-promotion, but no, Birth of the Fae, absolutely check them out.
Yeah.
Mark, take it away, my friend.
All right, Destiny, let's have you play us out as always. And for everybody else, we will see you on the other side.